I think a lot of advertisers or maybe a lot of brand owners that may be running ads themselves don't actually really think about this, right? From the impression to all the way until the customer makes a purchase, I want to walk you through the decisions that are taking place across this whole entire journey. Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the E-commerce Growth Map podcast with your host, Frank Kenny, head of growth and CEO here at Line Media. And so in today's episode of the podcast, I want to essentially walk you through what is the full funnel steps of what happens when you're running ads on Meta or across any platforms. I want to walk you through the steps of from the impression to all the way until the customer makes a purchase. I want to walk you through the decisions that are taking place across this whole entire journey, from the impression to the ad being clicked to the landing page to what is happening on the landing page to the customer deciding to purchase. I want to walk you through what that entire journey looks like, what are customers thinking about, what advertisers should be thinking about. And this is a crucial thing to mention or to go through because, quite frankly, I think a lot of advertisers or maybe a lot of brand owners that may be running ads themselves don't actually really think about this, right? And it's important because as you're crafting creatives, as you're building landing pages, right? Or you're thinking about your offers, these are things that you want to think about, right? These are steps that you need to think about and how the consumer will react to all these different steps, right? And this is very important. So I will share my screen and then I have a diagram essentially that kind of walks you through this decision-making process. And in addition to that, I'm going to go into an ad account and actually show you what some of the different metrics and what we look at specific ad accounts and ads and the metrics that we look at to then make optimization decision. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it, right? So what you essentially see over here, right? Let me zoom in on this so this is a little easier and cleaner to look at, right? So this is essentially like a decision map, right? So from the moment that you launch an ad out there on Meta, or whether that be on Google, but for this specific example, we're going to focus mainly on Meta, right? So you go out there, you launch an ad. What happens after you launch an ad, right? And so Meta takes that ad, obviously it goes through like their verification process, make sure that everything looks good. And then after they decide to serve the ad, that becomes essentially like an impression, right? Then an impression is essentially like that's an impression. So you go from impression, right? And then after somebody sees an ad, then they decide whether they want to click on the ad or not, right? So we have over here ad impression, right? So from the ad impression, right, then somebody clicks on the ad, right? But the reason why people wouldn't even click on the ad happens for a particular reason in which you can then optimize this step over here, because across each step, there are different things that can be optimized, right? So if a person doesn't click on an ad after being served an ad, right, or after an compression, or even an eyeball, as we can also call it, it means that they're the wrong audience, meaning you're not really targeting the right audience within Meta, right? So that's one of the first things that can happen if somebody doesn't click an ad. It's the wrong audience that you're targeting. So then you got to think about then, okay, what other audience can I target that is relevant to my customer, relevant to the product that I sell? That's another thing that you have to think about, right? So if they don't click on the ad, wrong audience, right? Or it's the right audience, but the ad is not really that compelling to them, right? Which is why Meta pushes for people to create multiple or dozens of different ads targeting different customer personas, using different unique ad angles or creative angles, or just creating a bunch of different ads so that you don't run into this problem, right? But quite often what we see is that people will probably run like 3 ads or so, and then they'll leave that just kind of running, right? So 2 things can happen out of that is that those ads that you ran, it's not compelling, right? Or the other thing that would happen if maybe it might be compelling in the beginning, but then what happens, like the ad gets fatigued and people just stop clicking on the ad, right? So all of those things happen just within the ad impression. So those are different things already that you can start optimizing, right? And so if you'll notice, and here's the other thing that you'll notice too as well. So I'm going to jump into like a meta ad account here, for example, right? I'm going to jump into a meta ad account just to kind of show you the metrics that we look at from the ad perspective, because we are still on the ad perspective, right? So we're looking at this particular ad account over here. And really what we want to look at, so let's click on this one. We'll click on this, and then we will go to the ad section, because again, that's where we're focusing on. The different type of metrics that we're looking on from the impression. So what that will look like. This is all the broad audience that we're running. And then we'll talk more about this in a bit. But so now that we see the different ads that we're running over here, then we can start to look at the specific metrics. So you can see all the metrics for the ads over here, right? So you can see that one of the first things that you'll notice is the impressions, right? The first thing that we were looking at within that diagram, well, not the diagram, but like that skeleton essentially, is the impressions, right? You'll see this particular ad got like 33,000 impressions, 32,000 impressions, 42,000 impressions, 80,000 impressions, right? And then the next thing that you'll notice is the CPM, right? The CPM is more so of a market-given metric. This is essentially what Meta charges you for each 1,000 people that sees the ad. That's what they charge you, right? And you can see like the different price point on that. Right. Then the next thing that we're going to get into then is going to be like the clicks, like somebody clicking on the ad to the click-through rate, et cetera, right? So we're going to come back to this in just a moment, but let's continue on the diagram, right? So now you're going from the ad impression to somebody actually clicking on the ad now, right? So if somebody clicked on the ad, there's a few things that are happening here. Either the person that you're targeting was the right audience, and so that the ad that you were using was compelling enough for them to click on the ad, right? So they clicked on the ad. So what happens now after they click on the ad? They obviously go to then a landing page to wherever you're directing traffic to. Now let's talk about that. Because this is the next big problem. Now you're not just looking at the Meta Ads Manager and just looking at the different metrics, because now there's not really much you can do after that within Meta. Because now the next place of optimization that takes place within is the landing page, which quite frankly, many people completely disregards, is the landing page. It's what happens on the landing page. Because you got to think about this. What is the goal of an ad? The goal of an ad is to get attention, right? It's to get attention and then drag that attention to a sales page or to a landing page, right? But again, I think that many people just completely miss the landing page section. They think that, if you just run Meta ads, then regardless of where they land, they're going to purchase the product, right? And I think if you've been running Meta ads for quite some time now, you will understand that that's completely false, right? Because what actually happens, there's a lot of optimization that actually does need to happen on the landing page side, right? Not only on the ad side. So somebody lands on a landing page. So there's a few things that are happening within the landing page. Somebody may fall right off after landing on the landing page for a few reasons. One of the reasons being the landing page is not really relevant to the ad, or the offer on the landing page is not really relevant to the ad, or what you have on the landing page, like information on the landing page doesn't give the customer or the potential customer enough information to make a decision to continue to purchase your product. Right, so those are just some of the things that can happen. Also, your landing page might be loading too slow, and so people's attention span is like very, 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 very little, right? Because that is quite a big problem. If your landing page is loading too slow because the images or how you structure the landing page, it just takes too much bandwidth and just too much time to load, some people will just jump right off, and then you're gonna start having a high bounce rate. Right? So this is just some of the things that happens on the landing page, but let's actually walk through what the diagram over here. So from the landing page now, a few things, as I mentioned, will happen is that the layout may be confusing. Like the consumer doesn't actually know what it is that you're trying to sell or what you're selling. So if they're confused, they're not going to purchase, then they're going to bounce right off, right? The other thing that may happen is most of people shop using their mobile version, using the mobile phone, should I say, right? So you got to think about that. So when you're designing your landing page, you got to first design it for mobile because that's where most people are shopping from these days, right? That's a very important piece. So if you're not designing your landing page to fit the mobile version, then like you're likely not going to be getting people to purchase products, right? So that's another thing that you got to optimize for. Or as I mentioned before, just the page didn't match the ad, right? Or the offer that you essentially had on the ad didn't match what's on the landing page, right? So it's like they're all connected in a way. And so you just have to make sure that you're following through, right? So the next thing, what happens if, okay, the landing page is not confusing or like the layout looks fine, it's optimized for mobile version. What happens now? Cool. Then so the consumer is then going to look at a product, right? It's going to look at a specific product. And here are other things that they're going to be thinking, or here are other reasons why they may not purchase the product. One is the product image or description is not sufficient enough for them to essentially make a buying decision. Because that is something actually common in e-commerce. Because people don't provide good quality images or even just photo, or even just video for that matter to show a full description or full view of what the product actually is that the consumer is going to be purchasing. Because you got to think about this. People buy off of the image that they see online. So you have to make sure that image is very compelling, right? Yet very little e-commerce brands that we've come across do this, right? And so that's sometimes one of the first things that when we're working with a brand, we'll look at the product page and then we start to make optimization of that because if I'm looking at this, like this doesn't look very compelling for me to purchase, right? And so again, product image or description is not valid or it's just very incorrect or it's just not appealing. Right? That's another thing. Or it's just that the offer that you have is not good enough, meaning like the price point of the consumer, the price point of the product is maybe too expensive for this customer that you're targeting. But then the other thing you have to think about then, man, maybe I'm targeting the wrong people on the ad. Maybe I need to change the target audience to people that can afford my product if I sell a higher price point product. Those are other things that you got to think about, right? And just to kind of go back over here, so some of the things that we actually do on a consistent basis, we test out landing page. We're always testing out different landing page and different offers, right? And one of the things that we use to do that is called, we use Repro, obviously, to build like the landing page because we're always like, our team is always like testing different design, different layout to see which one is going to convert the best. And then there's another tool that we use, it's called A/B Convert. On that, we're constantly testing out new landing pages, meaning, and I'll probably show you an example of a test that we're running, but what it looks like is we have our essentially like our control. This is our best performing landing page, but then we have another structured landing page that we've already designed that we want to test against, right? Or maybe on that landing page, maybe we're changing like the offer to see if this offer is more compelling than the previous offer, right? So those are just some of the things that we're going to test on the landing page. But the goal is to always be testing landing page, not just testing creative on the meta ad, but also be testing A/B testing landing page, right? Cool. So just to continue off of this, so another thing that the consumer another reason why the consumer may not proceed to the next step of the funnel is if they really just can't find, if you have like multiple products within your e-commerce shop, they may not find something that they want, right? Because here's the thing that may happen too. Consumers are going to see an ad that, yes, it looks compelling. It's going to draw them into your store, but then they will go to your store. And if you sell multiple products, they'll go and try to find something that may be compelling, right? So the ad that you're using to drive traffic to your landing page may not always be what they're looking for, but it was compelling enough to get your attention to go on the landing page to the landing page or to the product page to see what else you offer, right? And so now, obviously, if you're just selling like one product, if it's just like a one product landing page, then obviously that doesn't necessarily matter too much. Then it's not the right customer for your product, right? Cool. What's the next step after Dave? Essentially, we've covered all these steps. What's the next step? If the product was appealing enough, and you have the right description, and you have good product images, and it's not too expensive, you just have the right offer. And what essentially will happen next is like they're going to add the product to cart. right? So which is the next step over here. So now after they've added the product to cart, and it's like, okay, cool. They're one step closer for purchasing the product. So like now, they're more invested into this journey of purchasing your product, right? But here are some of the things why a consumer may not purchase your product, because yes, a lot of people actually add products to cart, but never actually complete the purchase for multiple reasons. Maybe they just got busy, something distracted them, something else caught their attention, and then they just abandoned their cart, right? Now, in other videos, we've talked about how to essentially different ways we can optimize to get people to come back and purchase your product, mainly using email marketing, but obviously that's not the purpose of this right now. So here are some of the other things some of the other reasons people may not purchase their product, right? So these people are just browsing and they were just interested in essentially kind of seeing what it is that you have to offer, right? So this is essentially like just tire kickers, right? And one of the things might happen is, yes, they're interested in buying this product, but you're out of stock, which to a large extent can be a good thing, right? That means like your product is already selling, right? So you can, and one of the things that you can do if you have a product that is out of stock, you can add people to like a wait list or something like that, or like pre-order type of thing. So that's another message that you can have if the product is out of stock. But that's another reason why people may not purchase your product, because your product is out of stock. And the other thing, which is also common, is just the unclear call to action, right? Because you got to think about this too, like depending on who you're targeting, the demographic that you're targeting. If it's like somebody that's not very, techy or doesn't purchase online as much, or somebody that's a little bit like in the older demographic, they may not necessarily, like you have to make it so straightforward to where there's no confusion can occur, right? Somebody add the product to the cart, boom, buy now or check out, right? So that you want to make it that easy, right? Okay, cool. Somebody add the product to cart, then the next thing that they're going to do, obviously they're going to view their cart, right? And so after viewing the cart, then they're going to begin to check out. But here's some of the reasons why people might abandon their cart. Maybe they're saving the product for later, right? Or maybe there's no promo code for them. Maybe there's like no promo or discount that is being offered, or maybe like a feel for them to enter a promo code or a discount, right? Or the shipping might be just too much. But that's another thing. Actually, a lot of people bounce or don't proceed to purchase the product because the shipping is just too much. People don't necessarily want to pay $5 or $10 for shipping, depending on how expensive your shipping is. So you might even consider giving free shipping after somebody adds the product to cart or view the cart, right? Cool. View the cart. What's the next step? Is the checkout, right? Why would they not complete their checkout, right? Let's see. No guest checkout option. Right. So some of the things that we've actually seen is that people enforce people to essentially like sign up to essentially their website to be a customer, like to sign up to create an account. The people don't necessarily want that. And so some people may leave their checkout experience or may abandon their checkout because of this. So you want to give people an option to check out as a guest, right? And the other thing is just like way too many fields, and people just get confused and like, I don't want to fill all that information up, right? And so they may just abandon that because of that specific reason. So you want to make it as easy as possible for people just to auto-fill information and then just complete the checkout, right? Let's see. As I mentioned, but people are forced to create an account. You don't want to do that, right? So cool. What's the next step after this? Enter shipping information, right? I'm literally taking you through like the whole process. Enter shipping information. What could be some errors that customers may experience through this? Form error validation issues, right? That's the one thing. Delivery time is too long, right? If the delivery time is too long, then again, some customer will probably just go on Amazon and try to find an alternative, right? And where they get 2-day shipping, right? So this is actually a very big rebuttal over here. Like, oh, this is going to take too long. I can just go on Amazon and purchase the product, right? What's the next thing? Shipping is too expensive, right? So again, you can always give customer free shipping if you see that to be an issue or a rebuttal, right? Okay, cool. Since we covered all of this, what's the next step? Then they enter the payment information, right? Some things that may happen: card may get declined, security concern, payment method not valid, right? So this is another step of the funnel that you have to optimize for, right? You want to make sure that you make your customer feel as secure as possible by adding like payment badges, doing in that section of like of purchasing the product. payment badge, just making sure that they feel secured when they're making a purchase, right? Because again, there's a lot of scammers out there. You don't want your website or you don't want your checkout experience to seem anything relative to spam, right? Or to a scam. So just kind of make sure that you're covering all these things. But the biggest thing is making sure that you have security, you have payment badges, anything just kind of making the customer feel secured. What's the next step? Cool. Then they review the order, right? And some of the things, the rebuttals that they might have is unclear return policy, right? Make sure that you have a clear return policy on there, right? Because those are things that customers actually look like. If they don't like the product, they want to make sure that they can return the products back to the company, right? And let's see, what's our change mind on purchase? That's another reason people they change their mind. Actually, I don't want to purchase this anymore. It's crazy the different reasons why consumer might think about not purchasing the product. Hopefully that makes sense. But the other thing is final price shock. That's just after essentially going through that whole process and they look at the total, they're like, oh my God, this is more than I actually wanted to spend. And that's another reason why they will abandon their checkout experience. But if you've covered all of these, you have clear return policy, right? And the customer, you're just essentially within that experience, you're making sure that you're answering any rebuttal that the customer may have. You have different reviews in that checkout experience. You have different reviews from different customers and things like that. That just kind of further helps reinforce and makes the customer more comfortable about purchasing from your brand, especially if it's the first time, right? And that there's no big price change surprises after they finally entered all that information. Because you'd be surprised because shipping is a big one, as I mentioned, right? Shipping is actually a big one in this. So just try to make sure that your shipping is not a big issue while your customers are not purchasing your product for the first time. And then after we've covered all those steps, boom, then the checkout experience is complete. The customer hits complete the checkout and they're done with their checkout. But guys, this is all the process and everything that the consumer is actually thinking about when they're about to purchase a product, right? So you want to make sure that you're thinking about all these different steps, right? And how you can optimize all these different steps from the ad to the landing page to the checkout experience, guys. You really have to think about all this because it's complex, right? But once you get this, you're going to be converting customers at a very high conversion rate percentage, guys. Whew, guys, I know I mentioned that we're gonna look at an ad account and essentially just kind of walk you through some of the different optimization that we make when it comes to the specific ad itself, right? And some of the different metrics that we're looking at when we're thinking about making optimization, right? And so one of the first steps that we talked about was just making sure that people see the ad and the ad is compelling enough for them to click on the ad, right? That is the first step. The goal of an ad is to get people intrigued and interested enough to click on the ad to then go to the landing page, right? So in this specific step, we're gonna put a little more emphasis on the click itself, right? Because if you don't get this step right, then none of the other step that I talked about even matter. So you wanna make sure that you get the first step, which is optimizing the ad to get clicks, right? And so, there's a big shout or talk about Andromeda, right? And to some people, it's a big hindrance because people in the past that didn't get in the habit of testing multiple creative, they're not gonna see a lot of success with the update that's happening within Meta because Andromeda forces you to test multiple different creative, multiple different concepts. And if you're not doing that, you may see an ad work for a little bit and then after just a couple of days, tank, right? So it's crucial more than ever to make sure that you're testing dozens of different ads on a weekly basis, right? Now, obviously, a lot of it is also contingent on how much you're spending. If you're spending $5,000 a month on ads, then maybe you don't have to test as many ad creative. But that doesn't mean you don't have to test. You still have to test, but maybe not to the volume of 12 different creative a week, right? So a lot of it is also going to be contingent upon how much you're actually spending on a monthly basis, right? So to walk you through our thought process when we need to optimize creative, right? So we looked at a specific campaign. So actually, let me go back. And so about 80% to 70% of all our campaigns are acquisition campaign, meaning prospecting, right? And so when kind of the things that we look to optimize is we look at the click-through rate of each campaign, right? So there's going to be different benchmark or baseline for click-through rate across different industry, right? So for our specific industry, when we look at a click-through rate of like a 1.35 or 1.47 or 1.6 or even a 2, for us, that's okay. We're doing okay. It could be better, but that's okay, right? And the reason why we think that's okay, because we have a high converting sales funnel. We have a high converting landing page, and our price point of our product has a high AOV, as you will see here in just a moment, right? So when people, like, we don't need to have a high click-through rate to make a good return on ad spend, because at the end of the day, when you're just looking at the platform, return on ad spend is what really matters. On the specific account that we're looking at, month to date, return on ad spend, I think it's like a 3.85. Yeah, return on ad spend is a 3.85. So that's good for us. We've essentially engineered and designed a game that will win in ad, right? And so if we came to the case where, okay, cool, our landing page was probably like below a 1, then that would be a little bit concerning, right? But we can still get away with that, right? Because, for example, when you look at this campaign over here, the landing page is actually below, the click-through rate is actually below a 1% click-through rate. However, because this landing page is converting at such a high percentage to where it's not really hindering us, right? And so now when we look at the ROAS, we're still getting a very good return on ad spend. Why? Because we have a good offer on that landing page, right? And so if the offer on the landing page is good, you're gonna get a high conversion rate from just the people that are landing on that page. Yes, we can go back and continue to test different ads to make sure that we can increase overall click-through rate, because if we can increase the percentage of people that are clicking on our ad and going to our landing page, then we can convert even more people, because we know that we have a high conversion rate. Because looking at the conversion rate from all these campaigns, this is actually the highest. And one of the reasons it's actually the highest is because this is a sale. This is a BOGO sale, right? So the offer on this page, it's really good, right? So I'm trying to get you in the mindset of thinking about different ways to kind of optimize different metrics, or different ways to overlook different metrics, because there's different things that you already have set up. For this specific example, our click-through rate for our campaign may not be the highest, but we have a high converting landing page. And so that essentially makes up for the low click-through rate, because we know that we can get people on the website, and then the people that we do get on the website, we're converting them at a high click-through, at a high conversion rate, because we have a good offer on that specific landing page or that specific collection page, right? So that's another thing. However, when you look at the other campaigns that we're running, right, the conversion rate is actually lower on this one, right? Remember, the other campaign has a 3.04 conversion rate. This one has a 1.23 conversion rate. But however, when we kind of back up a little bit, when we look at the click-through rate, it's almost at a 2, right? It's almost at a 2% conversion rate. So with this one, here's what's happening right now. We're driving significantly more people on the landing page, right? And we're converting a lesser percentage compared to the other campaign, but we're just driving more traffic to that landing page, right? And so we are still able to get a good return on ad spend, because we're still getting a lot of people on that page, because we have a high click-through rate, and those people are still converting. Even though the conversion rate is lower than the previous one, which is at 1.23, that's still okay, because we have a high AOV. The AOV, and our average AOV is $139, which is still pretty good, right? Our average AOV is $39, right? So those are just other things, again, to think about. High AOV, a lot of traffic on the landing page helps us get a high return on ad spend. Let's look at another one. So this is another campaign. So we can see this one has even a lower conversion rate. However, we're still getting like a 3.54 return on ad spend, right? But when we look at the click-through rate, what's the click-through rate showing us? Click-through rate is showing, this is the one of the highest click-through rate that we have. This is a 2.17, right? So 2.17 click-through rate, cost per click is like this lowest that we have on all campaigns. However, our conversion rate is the lowest, right? So our high click-through rate kind of overcomes for the lower website conversion rate, because we're getting more traffic on the website, and we are still able to obviously convert a good percentage of those people. Because we have a high AOV, we can still get a good return on ad spend, as you guys can see over here, guys. I hope you can kind of see different ways in which you can kind of, I don't want to say rig the system, but optimize for different things if you see that you're not well optimized for other metrics, right? In this specific case, we're just focusing on the ad. So we have to make sure that we can get the clicks. After we get the clicks, we have to make sure that we can convert the clicks, right? Now, some of the things that may occur is that you're getting a high click-through rate, but you're not converting enough of those people, right? So that may result in a low return on ad spend. Other thing that may occur is that you're not getting a high click-through rate. However, you have a high conversion rate in which that makes up for the low click-through rate, in which because you're converting more people on that specific landing page. So you can still get a high return on ad spend. Now, the ideal scenario that you want is that you have a high click-through rate and you have a high website conversion rate or landing page conversion rate, right? So that's the scenario ideally that you want. But if for whatever reason you don't have that specific scenario, you kind of have to optimize for one or the other, right? High click-through rate, if your conversion rate is low, that's okay. You can still get a good return on ad spend. Low click-through rate, you have to have a high converting landing page, or else your return on ad spend is going to be poor. Different ways you can optimize this. Guys, I hope this video is helpful in terms of just kind of thinking about the whole customer journey from the moment that somebody sees an ad to the moment that become the customers, and the different metric that you kind of have to optimize for, and then the psychology of like the customer, kind of like what they're thinking when they're going through that journey, and the different ways that you can answer any rebuttal and kind of optimize those different steps of the landing page to where you can get the customer to follow through and convert and become a customer. Guys, hopefully that makes sense. If you enjoyed this video, if you made it all the way through this video, please subscribe to this channel. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. We'll see you guys in the next video.